My first question is about because I read in an interview that the rehearsal for acting took about 9 months, and I think some of this happens because of the COVID situation, maybe. But I'm asking, what is the role of chance and improvisation in your cinema? Do you plan everything before? Is there any possibility of, for example, change when you are on the set? And if that happens in this film, can you give a kind of example?
ببینید موقعی که در واقع من تمرین میکنم یا حتی میرم سر فیلم برداری یه چیزایی پیش میاد که تاثیر میذاره و من فیلمنامه رو یه تغییرات میدم، ولی واقعا این تغییرات بیشتر توی جزئیاته، توی کلیات فیلمنامه نیست.
Look, when I write the script and I start the rehearsal process, there are things that happens on the set and the rehearsal that I add into the script, but these are just the details. The small details of the script. The general construction of the script stays the same.
به خاطر اینکه این نوع فیلمنامه یه جوری مثل دومینوه، مثل پازله. اگه مثلا یه چیزی الان توی تمرین امروز ببینی و بیا یه پازل رو عوض کنی، کل این دومینو انگار به هم میریزه، دوباره یه بار دیگه باید همه چی بچینیم، ولی تو جزئیات میشه تغییراتی داد.
Yeah, because this kind of, stories is like a dominoes effect. If you just took one part out, this whole game will fall apart. So you can change a little bit of details here and there, but you cannot change the biggest stuff like the construction of the script.
ولی گاهی هم پیش اومده در بعضی از فیلم‌ها، مثلا در درباره الی، من توی فیلم برداری یه اتفاقی افتاد که توی فیلمنامه اصلا بهش فکر نکردم و ننوشته بودم و اینقدر در واقع اون یه پلان تاثیر گذاشت، اون پلان شد آخرین پلان فیلم و فاینال اندینگ فیلم شد اون پلانی که انگار طبیعت به من هدیه داد.
But it has happened like in other films. For example, in About Ellie, something happened on the set that I wasn't planning, but it was such a beautiful and like impactful scene that I had to use it in the film and I put it in the film. But that was something, a gift that the nature gave me.
صحنه آخر فیلم درباره الی.
It's the last scene of About Ellie.
اون توی فیلمنامه نبود اصلا.
That wasn't in the film at all.
ولی معمولاً من همون چیزی که تو فیلمنامه نوشتن رو تمرین می‌کنیم و سر صحنه اجرا می‌کنیم. ولی تو جزئیات چرا مثلا یه بازیگر یه کاری میکنه که به نظرم خوبه و اون استفاده میکنیم.
So therefore we already written the script and we don't change that, but when we are on the set and the actor does something and it's just a little bit of details and a small details, yes, we add that into this film.
I have questions about you are talking a lot about the issue of that morality is something that we cannot decide upon it. And you somehow show that characters are in conflict when they are dealing with each other, and we see this in different films of you. But what do you think of, for example, virtual and social media? Because social media right now is becoming like a hatred machine. It's becoming a machine in which everybody is trying to attack the others, and sometimes it's becoming makes life very difficult, even for the artists, for different people. So I'm just curious to know, what do you think of the social media? And do you still believe that as an artist you shouldn't, for example, criticize the life that we could recently see more and more in Instagram, Facebook, social media?
ببینید در واقع این حرفی که میزنم باید حواسمون باشه که ما این واقعیت رو فراموش نکنیم که سوشال میدیا به هر حال بخشی از زندگی امروز ماست و خیلی ویژگی مثبتی به زندگیمون اضافه کرده.
Look, before I say anything, we have to remember that the social media is, whether we like it or not, is part of our everyday lives and it has a very positive sides into it.
ولی نکته‌ای که تو سوشال میدیا وجود داره امروز یه المانیه به نام زمان.
But the point that social media has that we have to talk about is an element we call time.
در سوشال میدیا همه زمان خیلی المان مهمیه. همه چیز باید در کوتاه‌ترین زمان اتفاق بیفته و منتقل بشه.
In social media the time is very short and we have to kind of send the information to the audience in a very small short amount of time.
و اون سوشال میدیاهایی که سریع‌ترن پر مخاطب‌تر هستن، دقت کنید بهشون.
And the social medias that are faster actually have more of followers.
ولی این درست مقابل سینماست که مثلا یه موقعیتی رو 2 ساعت وقت داره باز کنه، لایه‌های مختلفش رو برداره و منتقل کنه به تماشاگر، ولی در سوشال میدیا همون رو با 40 تا کلمه باید منتقل کرد.
It's completely in the opposite way of cinema. In cinema you have 2 hours that you can talk about a subject and open it up and go into the details of it. But in social media, you have to do the whole thing that you do in cinema in 2 hours with like 40 words.
خود این زمان، این سرعت زمان به ایجاد سوء تفاهم میکنه.
And this fast pace that's happening in social media, even that, it just causes the misunderstandings.
در واقع توی سوشال میدیا به شما فرصت داده نمیشه که یکم فکر کنید به اون چیزی که دارید میخونید.
Basically in social media you don't have, it doesn't give you time, an opportunity to think about what you're reading.
اصلا یه جوری طراحی شده که ناخودآگاه انگشت شما یه جوری حرکت میکنه که به شما فرصت پاز کردن و فکر کردن نمیده. شما یه جوری طراحی کردن که همون که یه چیز رو خوندین و داره از صفحه خارج میشه بعدی اومده تو. یه طراحیه.
Yeah, it's basically the way that it's designed, it's in a way that you can't even pause on anything. You just go to the first one, and before you finish reading the first one, the next one already is coming up.
پس اینه که باعث این همه برخوردها توی سوشال میدیا میشه.
And that's what it causes all these, conflicts in social media.
و بعدم این یه موجود خیلی خردسالی تازه به دنیا اومده ولی شده عضو اصلی خانواده الان.
And this is like a very infant species, and but it's now like a huge part of the family. He's like a big family member right now.
You have a background in theater, and I read that in some of your works you even inspired by Shakespeare and great literature but Western. So I'm just curious, for example, in the hero, or when you are writing a script, do you thought about or think about, for example, great literature from the Western, because you wanted to make a story that makes sense also to Western audience? Do you play with the Western mythology, and how this knowledge of Western or Western theaters help you in writing the script?
من سلیقه‌ام بارها گفتم موقعی که با تئاتر آشنا شدم و اومدم دانشگاه، سلیقه نمایشی من در واقع شکل گرفت و تحت تاثیر خوندن حالا هم نمایشنامه‌های ایرانی هم نمایشنامه‌های غیر ایرانی.
Yeah, I've said this before that my taste in the theater was shaped in theater when I was a theater student by reading plays by non-Iranian and Iranian writers.
هم وقتی میگم غیر ایرانی هم اروپایی‌ها رو دارم میگم هم امریکایی‌ها رو میگم. مثلا خب هنوز که هنوزه حتی در همین فیلم قهرمان جنس نگاهی که ایبسن داره مثلا در دشمن مردم هنوز انگار به نظر میاد که من تحت تاثیر اون هستم.
Like when I say like non-Iranian, I mean both American and European. For example, I feel like even in the hero, the quality that Ibsen had in his plays, especially for example, Enemy of People, still is like in kind of alive in my writing and in my work.
یا مثلا در فیلم قبلی من خب آرتور میلر به طور مستقیم حضور داشت، یعنی من بر اساس نمایشنامه اون انگار یه آینه‌ای بود مقابل فیلمنامه من.
For example, in my last movie, A Salesman, Arthur Miller was like completely there, and his play was like a mirror in front of my story.
کارهای یوجین اولیل، کارهای ویلیامز، کارهای یونسکو، دیالوگ نویسی پینتر، اینا در یه دوره‌ای واقعا مثل هدیه هایی بود که یه دفعه رسید و اصلا کاراکتر در واقع شغلیم اونجا چیز شد، شکل گرفت.
Like writers like O'Neill or Tennessee Williams or like all these writers, or like Harold Pinter for writing dialogue. This like reading Harold Pinter was like a gift at a very specific time in my life that kind of shaped my career.
الان یکم مهمترین نمایشنامه نویسای آمریکایی و اونم درجه یکه، یا اون نمایشنامه نویس حالا اسمش یادم میاد بهتون میگم.
There is a new American writer that I can't remember his name right now, but like he's like fantastic, and when I remember, there are 2 of them, and when I remember their names, I'm gonna let you know. But yeah, they have influence on me.
What is interesting in Hero is that the fate of the characters, what would happen to different characters, is not very predictable. You don't know really what happened to the Rahim or the other characters. They are changing constantly shifting from one situation to the other situation. So I'm wondering how you try to balance the need to create this kind of surprise in your film and the balance to create a kind of movies that audience would see or would feel as a kind of real film or something that could happen in reality.
از دور به نظر میاد که این دو تا چیزه که کنار هم نمیتونن قرار بگیرن. یعنی این که شما یه فیلمی داشته باشین که یه ضرباهنگی داشته باشه و مدام در واقع آدم‌ها تغییرات داستانی سر راهشون باشه ولی واقعیت زندگی هم توش باشه، این به نظر دو چیز حل نمیشن انگار.
But from afar, it feels like these are the two things that you can't have them together at the same time. You know, the fact that we have a real life, a real people, but at the same time, there are the theme. No, sorry, the rhythm of the story is like very fast, and there are lots of story twists. It feels like from afar, these two things cannot dissolve to each other.
چیزی که من در این فیلم و بقیه فیلم‌ها سعی کردم انجام بدم، هنوزم فکر کنم که خیلی مسیر زیادیه تا سینما برسه به این و فیلمسازهای دیگه هم دارن در واقع هر کس از سمت خودش داره تلاشی میکنه اینکه بشه این رئالیسم رو با این جنس دراما که ضرباهنگ داره با هم یه جوری منطبق کرد. یعنی وقتی شما میبینید احساس نکنید که این از زندگی واقعی دوره، یعنی فکر کنید که این ریتمیه که در زندگی واقعی هم داره رخ میده.
Well, basically, I think the cinema still has a long way to get there, and other people are trying to do that. And that's the fact that you can add like a story and a story twist with a real life, and you're watching it without really feeling that you are watching a story, but you're watching the life as it unfolds. The rhythm of the story should be the rhythm of life itself. But we are trying to get there, but we are still have a long way to go.
There are lots of discussion today about diversity and inclusion in the cinema. And I'm just wondering, as an Iranian filmmaker, have you thought of, for example, making a story about great Iranian figures with your reputation and your good networking in, for example, in Hollywood? Have you thought of making, or have you ever thought of making another kind of film, not just a kind of movie about social realism, horror films or other genre? historical film.
ببینید وقتی آدم شروع در واقع نوشتنش با ناخودآگاهشه و با قلبشه، این شما نیستی که تصمیم میگیری چه جوری بنویسی، هر کاری میکنی این شکلی میشه. این یه تصمیم برنامه‌ریزی از قبل نیست دیگه.
Look, when you start your career and you start your work or a project with your subconscious and with your heart, this is not you making a decision. So therefore, whatever comes out, it comes out the way that it does, which is almost the same way.
اگر من مثلا یه روزی برم یه ژانر دیگه ای کار کنم، مثلا فیلمی که هدفش ایجاد وحشته کار کنم، دیگه فیلمی نیست که از درون قلب من چیز شده باشه. من آگاهانه تصمیم گرفتم یه کاری بکنم و نمیدونم که حاصلش در واقع احساس کنم که حاصلش خیلی دور خواهد بود از من.
Well, if I, for example, start to thinking about like making a horror film, it means that I consciously making a decision to scare people. And if it doesn't come out of my heart, it means that I'm very aware of it, and I don't know what the result would be. It probably would be something very far away from me.
ولی اون موضوعی که آیا علاقه‌مندم که مثلا راجع به آدم‌های بزرگ و افتخارات تاریخی کشورم فیلم بسازم، خیلی اینو علاقه دارم و فکر میکنم که اگر عمری باشه همه این مسیر رو دارم میرم که یه روزی یه دونه اون یه فیلم اونجوری کار کنم. امیدوارم بشه.
Yeah, but about like the question you asked about making like a film about the important Iranian figures, that's something that I always been interested to. I really like to do that, and I think like this path that I'm going through, the end of it, hopefully, if I'm still around, is to get to make those films about the pride characters of Iran.
This movie is going to be released through Amazon Prime, and very soon it will be available to watch through iPads or other digital devices. So I'm just curious to know how do you feel about these new medias and their relationship to the cinema. And was it something that happened during the production, the possibility of distributing with Amazon, or was it something that happened at the end? And if that happened during distribution, did it had any impact on your process of filmmaking?
خب به هر حال منم مثل خیلی از فیلمسازا، هر فیلمسازی دوست داره که فیلمش رو پرده بزرگ دیده بشه و دلم میخواست که فیلم بیشتر توی سالن‌های سینما دیده بشه، ولی امروزه این چیزی نیست که بشه قاطع در واقع جلوش رو گرفت. این اتفاقی که میفته برای همه فیلم‌ها میاد و توی صفحه‌های کوچیک دیده میشه متاسفانه، ولی اینو پذیرفتم دیگه.
I mean, me, like any other filmmakers, I would love to have my film seen in the big, in the theaters on the biggest screen. But this is not something that one can stop. Unfortunately, get very strong about it and say, I want to stop this. I want this happen on the theater. This is unfortunately the reality of everyday lives. It happens.
پخش کننده در واقع پخش کننده امریکا که آمازونه رو فکر میکنم، مطمئن نیستم، ولی فکر میکنم که اونها پخش کننده فرانسوی من ممنتو، اونها در واقع با آمازون در ارتباط بودن و چند ماهی در حال بحث و گفتگو و اینا بودن. من در جریان بودم داره این صحبت ها در واقع صورت میگیره، نه در جزئیات، و بعد وقتی فکر میکنم وقتی فیلم برداری تموم شد قطعی شد این داستان و به همین دلیل روی فیلمسازی من نه تاثیر نداره، چون فرقی نمیکنه که سونی کلاسیک پخش کننده من باشه یا در واقع آمازون.
Yeah, well, I think like my American distributor, Amazon, with like Memento and my friends, they were like in negotiations for a long time. I wasn't really was involved in it. I knew that it was happening, but they already set their deal when the movie was over. It makes no difference to me if it's like Amazon or like Sony Classic Pictures.
این توی کارگردانی و کارم تاثیر داره.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference in my directing.
And my last question, you mentioned a lot about your love of Italian neorealism, about Fellini, about De Sica and the other. I'm just curious about the contemporary filmmakers. Are there contemporary filmmakers that you are following? Or do you watch, for example, other filmmakers' works when you are trying to make a film, or do you see this as a kind of problems for your own imagination and your own process of making film?
موقعی که می‌نویسم یا سر صحنه فیلم برداری هم نه، کمتر فیلم می‌بینم، یعنی اصلا فرصتش پیدا نمیشه، ولی در فاصله‌ای که فیلم دیگه میره برای تدوین و یا تو مثلا همین دوره‌ای که پروموشن هستم و سعی می‌کنم که فیلم ببینم، فیلم‌هایی که خیلی شناخته شدن و اسمشون سر و صدا میکنه رو میگیرم و میبینم.
When I'm in the process of writing or at the set, I really don't watch any movies because there's no time. But before that, I'm trying to watch the movies that are important. I try to look at the movies that are made and they're important, and I try to watch them.
فیلم‌های امروز ایتالیایی هم میبینم، هستن فیلم‌های خوبی هم توش هستن، ولی یه جوری آدم این فقط مال اون دوره سینمای ایتالیا یه نوستالژی ما بهش داریم. مثلا دیگه فیلمی مثل فیلم‌های ویسکونتی امروزه دیگه آدم نمیبینه، نه در ایتالیا، در هیچ جا ویسکونتی رو نمیبینه آدم.
Right. I mean, I watch Italian cinema as well, and there are some good films in the Italian cinema, but we have some kind of nostalgia about the old Italian neorealism of Italian cinema. We don't see that many movies like Visconti movies, not just in Italy, anywhere in the world.
Thanks for your time, and thanks for your great movie, and I wish you best and success during Oscar campaign and during the screening at the United States.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.